Hello and welcome back. In today's video, we're going to talk about why visual documentation is essential for maintaining public infrastructure. Defining visual documentation for public infrastructure assets. Visual documentation refers to the systematic capture of images and videos that record the condition, context, and existence of infrastructure assets. For public agencies, visual documentation represents an objective evidence of existing in the field at a specific time and point. Unlike narrative reports alone, visual records provide verification, location-based confirmation, and supports infrastructure management decisions. This makes visual documentation a foundational component of modern infrastructure data systems. And so you have to think about why visual evidence matters to agencies. Public agencies are frequently required to justify decisions to internal leadership, auditors, regulators, and to the public. Visual evidence reduces the ambiguity by showing conditions directly rather than relying on written descriptions. So accurate visual records support maintenance prioritization, capital planning, and compliance reporting. In high-risk or high-cost decisions, visual documentation provides confidence and defensibility. Now, there are common types of visual documentation used in public works. Infrastructure visual documentation can take multiple forms. Still, imagery captures data asset conditions at specific moments, and videos provide broader context and continues alongside with corridors and facilities. Panoramic or aerial imagery often supports spatial perspective and connects the individual assets to their surroundings. Each format serves a different role depending on the infrastructure type and documentation objectives. So how does the process work? Let's look at the step-by-step process for capturing infrastructure visual records. Visual documentation begins with defining what assets or areas that need to be recorded. Capture methods are selected based on scale, access, and safety considerations. Images and videos are collected with the attention to clarify, to coverage, and to put into context. Files are then reviewed, organized, and linked to spatial or asset records to ensure that they can be retrieved and interpreted accurately in the future. So once this data is collected, how does visual documentation integrate with maps and GIS systems? Visual documentation is most effective when it is linked to location-based systems. GIS platforms associates images and videos with specific assets or conditions. Mapping platforms provide visual access to infrastructure conditions in geographic contexts. So, when integrated properly, visual records enhance the internal systems and external reference tools without duplicating data. Now, there are some risks created by incomplete or poor quality visual documentation. Visual documentation loses value when it is inconsistent, poorly labeled, or disconnected from asset records. Images without location context or timestamps may be unusable during audits or reviews. And inconsistent captured standards can make it difficult to compare conditions over time. These failures reduce trust in infrastructure data and weaken decision support. At Grace Aerial Technologies, visual documentation is captured with long-term usability in mind. Our workflow emphasizes on clarity, consistency, and spatial context so images and videos can be reliable and linked to maps and GIS systems. Visual records are organized to support audits, lifecycle tracking, and future reference. By treating visual documentation as structured data rather than standalone media, GATT supports infrastructure records that maintain and remain defensible and actionable.